Hi, this is Mary Yearling again, a parent in Indianapolis, Indiana, and again here with Dr. Phil Harris and Joan Harris, who wrote the Miss Standardized Test. I'm just asking some simple basic questions to get a better understanding of standardized testing, not only across our nation, but also particularly here in Indiana. The next question I had was, what makes a standardized test appropriate for use, and how is that being applied in Indiana?
Well, the first thing I always ask when someone asks me about testing is you have to articulate a purpose. That all testing has got to be purpose-driven. And we do not have in the state of Indiana a clearly articulated purpose for the testing of our students. And that relates to the lack of a clearly articulated purpose for public education.
I don't disagree with you, because when I've been talking with our legislators, you know, they keep saying we have to have a form of accountability, and these tests are what are you know, measuring learning. But I keep hearing from lots of people that it's a false measurement.
It is. The tests have ended up being the default definition of learning. Now, generally, there are two types of tests that we see in the classrooms: the achievement test and the diagnostic test.
Okay.
There are individual tests and group tests. The achievement tests are generally group tests, and the diagnostic tests are generally individual tests. There is the general notion that I-STEP and other standardized tests that our students are given are all achievement tests, and they are not diagnostic tests for the most part. Now, there are some exceptions in the reading category. There are some diagnostic tests, but those end up being administered for best information individually rather than groups.
So let me, am I understanding you correctly that, are you stating that I-STEP is really an achievement or a group measurement test?
That's correct.
But it's being used to measure on a diagnostic or individual
Being
level.
used as a diagnostic tool.
As well as to evaluate teachers and
Exactly.
schools.
And Joan can tell us how useful I-STEP scores were in her 30-year career in providing diagnostic information.
I can.
Yes, you can, Chair, if you feel okay with that.
I found that the tests themselves give you very little information. You get broad scores and cutoff scores and where the child falls within a group, but nothing really specific about their individual needs. No item analysis was ever shared with teachers.
Okay. What about, you know, going back to, you know, they're being used, these tests are being, they're supposed to be used on a group basis, but they're being used as an individual basis.
Mm-hmm.
So what would make, you know, them effectively used on an individual basis, or are they being? Could they be used? What is this standardization? You know, I'm not a statistician. Matter of fact, I dropped out of my stats class in college, I'm gonna be honest. and it's not something that I've studied as a parent. I'm sure a lot of other parents have studied. What makes a standardized test? I know the two words I believe are valid and reliable.
Well, and again, that relates to the purpose for which the test is being administered. If you want to know whether you are able to read, you might be able to get some idea of whether you are able to read in an achievement test.
Okay.
But what's the most important question? Are you able to read, or are you reading?
True.
And so for purposes of informing parents and students and teachers, knowing you might be able to read is not the same question as are you reading. If we know you are reading, we know you can.
True.
If we know you can read, we don't know if you are. So the primary criteria ought to be the question we're asking. in terms of whether the test is appropriate for the purpose we're asking the questions. So the achievement tests that we're administering in Indiana are only able to look at groups. And what those groups tell us depends on where you set the cut score for determining whether it's acceptable or not acceptable in terms of a group score. And oftentimes, the people misunderstand those group norms don't tell us anything about individuals. I could compare your individual score with the group, but it wouldn't tell me whether you were similar to all of the students in that group. You'd want to be compared with other individuals like yourself, and in order to decide how you're doing in a group like myself, not how I'm doing with kids who are very different than I am.
Just because you're 8 years old doesn't mean you're the same as the other 8-year-olds in the classroom.
No, I can speak to that with my, son. We were using sign language to communicate. He didn't speak till he was almost 3, and his reading was beyond. And so I know he wasn't age appropriate for many
Some people
years.
read,
As far as grade
earlier
level.
and then others.
Mhm.
Right. Some kids learn to read.
Just like they speak.
My son who's in college was reading in, full books in kindergarten. Very different.
Mhm.
Okay.
They're all different.